The story of Ukraine is, at its very core, a profound and enduring story of identity. It is an identity that has been meticulously forged over countless generations, shaped within the intense heat and immense pressure of a crucible of clashing empires, devastating wars, and seismic revolutions that have repeatedly redrawn the maps of Europe. This national saga is not written in simple books, but is etched across the vast, sprawling plains that have for millennia served as a vital and often contested crossroads of civilization. These endless fields have witnessed the march of armies, the rise and fall of kingdoms, and the quiet, stubborn resilience of a people determined to define themselves on their own terms, against all odds and against powerful neighbors who sought to define them instead. The country's very name, Ukraine, carries with it the echoes of this long and complex history, a name that is often translated as borderland. This interpretation speaks to its geographical and political reality, perched on the edge of great powers. However, its exact origins remain a subject of spirited debate among dedicated scholars, with some compelling arguments suggesting it more simply meant region or country in older Slavic tongues. This linguistic ambiguity itself mirrors the larger struggle for self-definition that has characterized Ukraine's path. Is it merely a land between, a buffer zone for others, or is it a distinct land in its own right? This fundamental question has been asked and answered with blood and ink throughout its history. To truly comprehend the remarkably resilient and defiant nation of Ukraine that we see on the world stage today, we must embark on a journey that takes us far back in time. It is not enough to look at the events of the last century, or even the last 300 years. We have to rewind the clock over 1,000 years, venturing into a past that feels both epic and foundational. This journey will transport us to an age of daring Viking adventurers, navigating treacherous rivers, and of powerful Byzantine emperors ruling from the glittering city of Constantinople. It is a journey to the very heart of the legendary state known as Kyivan Rus, which stands as the undeniable cradle of East Slavic civilization. This exploration is not merely an academic exercise, it is essential for understanding the present moment and the deep historical currents that flow beneath the surface of modern headlines. The legacy of this ancient state, its culture, its faith, and its political structures, forms the bedrock upon which Ukrainian identity was first built. It is the starting point for a narrative that has been deliberately obscured, contested, and rewritten by others for centuries. By returning to the source, we can begin to untangle the threads of a history that is as glorious as it is tragic, and as complex as it is inspiring, and see the foundations of a nation that was never truly erased. Long before the city of Moscow was even a humble village mentioned in a chronicle, a vibrant and powerful civilization rose from the rich black earth along the winding banks of the mighty Dnieper River. This was not an empty or desolate land waiting to be discovered. It had a deep and ancient history of its own. Greek city-states and colonies had long dotted the temperate Black Sea coast, trading goods and ideas, while nomadic peoples like the enigmatic, horse-riding Scythians had roamed the vast, open steppe for centuries, leaving behind their intricate gold treasures in burial mounds. But the cohesive story of a unified state, a political entity with a clear center and expanding influence, truly kicks off in the 9th century. This new chapter began with the dramatic arrival of Scandinavian warriors and merchants whom the local Slavic tribes knew as the Varangians, and whom we know today as Vikings. These ambitious adventurers carved out a vital artery of commerce and conquest, a legendary route that stretched all the way from the cold Baltic to the warm Mediterranean, known to history as the road from the Varangians to the Greeks. This trade route was more than just a path for exchanging furs, wax, and honey for silk, spices, and silver. It was a conduit of power that connected the rugged lands of northern Europe with the almost unimaginable wealth and sophistication of the Byzantine Empire, centered on its magnificent capital, Constantinople. Control over this riverine highway meant control over immense riches and strategic advantage. Around the year 882, a formidable Varangian leader named Oleg, known in the Norse sagas as Oleg, recognized the supreme importance of a particular settlement perched on the high hills overlooking the Dnieper. He seized this strategic town, Kyiv, from other Varangian lords. The ancient chronicles of the era, written by monks in the centuries that followed, would later bestow upon Kyiv the hallowed title of the mother of all Rus cities, forever cementing its central and sacred role in the birth of this new civilization. The single most defining and transformative moment for the future of Kyivan Rus, an event whose profound consequences would echo for more than 1,000 years, arrived in the year 988. It was then that the reigning Grand Prince, Volodymyr the Great, made a monumental choice that would irrevocably alter the destiny of his people and his state. After reportedly sending emissaries to study the major religions of the neighboring lands, including Islam, Judaism, and Western Christianity, Volodymyr decisively rejected the pagan gods his ancestors had worshipped. He chose instead to adopt Orthodox Christianity from the most powerful and glamorous civilization he knew, the Byzantine Empire. The primary chronicle, a key historical source, provides a dramatic and legendary account of a mass baptism of the people of Kyiv, with thousands entering the waters of the Dnieper River to embrace their new faith. This was far more than just a personal conversion or a simple change of official religion. Adopting Byzantine Christianity was a profound geopolitical and cultural realignment. It effectively hardwired the burgeoning state of Russes into the very heart of Eastern Christendom, plugging it directly into the immense spiritual, artistic, and intellectual traditions of Constantinople. This decision ignited a spectacular cultural golden age, as Byzantine priests, architects, and artists flocked to Kyiv, bringing with them the sophisticated knowledge and skills of their ancient empire. Under the long and prosperous reigns of Volodymyr and his equally brilliant son, Yaroslav the Wise, this new faith remade the physical and spiritual landscape of the realm, cementing a new identity for its people, based on shared belief and ritual. Despite the incredible achievements of Yaroslav's reign, the golden age he had so carefully cultivated was not built to last forever. A critical flaw was inadvertently built into the very system of succession. Instead of the rule of primogeniture, where the eldest son inherits the throne, Kyivan Rus followed a complex and often contentious rotational system, where power passed from brother to brother before moving to the next generation. After the death of Yaroslav the Wise in 1054, this system began to unravel. What was intended to be an orderly transfer of power among the members of the ruling Rurikid dynasty quickly devolved into bitter and destructive infighting between rival princes, each vying for the prestigious and powerful throne of Kyiv. This constant internal strife began to crack the state's foundations, bleeding it of resources and unity. As the princes of different Rus principalities grew more powerful and autonomous, the central authority of the Grand Prince in Kyiv waned significantly. The state effectively began to fragment into a collection of semi-independent and often warring regional powers. While Kyiv retained its immense symbolic and religious importance, its direct political and military control over the vast territory of Rus steadily eroded throughout the 12th century. This internal weakness, combined with disruptions to the vital trade routes that were the lifeblood of its economy, left the once mighty federation dangerously exposed. Weakened from within and increasingly isolated, Kyivan Rus was about to face an existential threat, a devastating catastrophe that would sweep in from the distant eastern steppes. With the magnificent city of Kyiv devastated by the Mongol onslaught and its political authority shattered, the center of Ruthenian power and identity had no choice but to shift. The old heartland of Kyivan Rus lay in ruins, its people and princes now forced to pay tribute to the distant Mongol Khans of the Golden Horde. For a time, the Western Rus principalities, most notably the formidable kingdom of Galicia-Volhynia, proudly carried the torch of Kyivan Rus's legacy. This kingdom, under rulers like Danilo of Halich, resisted Mongol dominance and actively courted the West, but it too was ultimately caught between powerful neighbors. By the 14th century, it was clear that a new political reality was dawning, and the once unified lands of Rus were being pulled into the orbits of rising regional powers. Most of the territory that constitutes modern-day Ukraine was gradually absorbed by the ambitious and rapidly expanding Grand Duchy of Lithuania. This absorption was less a brutal conquest and more a gradual incorporation, as Lithuanian rulers extended their control over the sparsely defended and politically fragmented Rus principalities. The Grand Duchy of Lithuania itself was a unique and fascinating state. Though its ruling dynasty was pagan Lithuanian, the vast majority of its subjects were East Slavs, the ancestors of modern Ukrainians and Belarusians. The Lithuanian rulers proved to be remarkably pragmatic and adaptable in governing their diverse realm. They wisely adopted the sophisticated administrative practices and legal traditions of their new subjects. In a testament to this cultural fusion, the official written language of the Grand Duchy's court and its legal documents was not Lithuanian, but the local Ruthenian language, the direct descendant of the Old East Slavic spoken in Kyivan Rus. The union between Lithuania and Poland, formalized and strengthened over time, eventually culminated in the creation of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in 1569 through the Union of Lublin. This momentous event created one of the largest and most populous countries in 16th century Europe, a vast, multi-ethnic and multi-religious republic ruled by an elected monarch. As part of this new arrangement, a large portion of the Ukrainian lands, including the regions of Volhynia and Kyiv, were transferred directly from the administration of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania to the Crown of the Kingdom of Poland. This political shift had immense consequences, as it significantly accelerated the process of Polonization and introduced new social and religious pressures that had been less pronounced under purely Lithuanian rule. Under Polish administration, the influence of Polish culture, language, and legal norms grew immensely. The Polish nobility, the szlachta, enjoyed extensive rights and privileges, known as the Golden Liberty, which were highly attractive to the Ruthenian aristocracy. To secure these same rights and maintain their status within the Commonwealth, many Ruthenian nobles began to convert to Roman Catholicism and adopt the Polish language and customs. This gradual assimilation of the native elite created a growing social and religious chasm between the Polonized, Catholic landowners and the vast majority of the Ukrainian peasantry, who remained fiercely loyal to their Orthodox faith and their Ruthenian traditions. This deepening divide would become a major source of social tension and resentment for centuries to come. The Cossacks were a diverse and motley group, a society born from the margins of the established feudal order. They were runaway serfs, fleeing the oppressive bonds of their Polish lords, daring townsfolk seeking adventure and fortune, and even disenfranchised nobles who had lost their lands or status and sought to build a new life on the frontier. Together, drawn by the promise of freedom in the wild fields, as the steppes were known, they formed fiercely independent, self-governing military communities. They lived by hunting, fishing, and raiding, becoming a formidable buffer force that defended the Commonwealth's southern border from Tatar incursions, even while they often clashed with the authorities of the very state they were, in effect, protecting. At the very heart of the Cossack world was the legendary Zaporozhian Sich, a formidable island fortress located on the Dnieper River, strategically situated beyond the rapids that gave the region its name. This fortress was more than just a military encampment. It was the political and spiritual center of a unique Cossack republic. Here, far from the rigid hierarchies of feudal Europe, the Cossacks practiced a raw and vibrant form of participatory democracy. They gathered in open councils, or radas, to make all major decisions, including the crucial choice of electing their military and political leaders, the hetmans. They lived by their own unwritten code of honor and brotherhood, creating a society built on a radical spirit of individual liberty and collective responsibility that was a world away from the Polish system of noble privilege. In the aftermath of his successful rebellion, Hetman Bohdan Khmelnytsky found himself at a dangerous and precarious crossroads, a moment that would fundamentally alter the course of Ukrainian history. His newly forged Cossack Hetmanate was a beacon of autonomy, but it was surrounded by powerful and hostile neighbors, including the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which was determined to reclaim its lost territories, and the formidable Ottoman Empire to the south. To protect the fragile independence of his new state, Khmelnytsky knew he needed a powerful ally. In 1654, he made a pivotal and still fiercely debated decision. He gathered his Cossack officers at the town of Yaroslav and signed a treaty placing the Hetmanate under the formal protection of the Tsar of Muscovy, a fellow Orthodox ruler. From the Cossack perspective, this agreement was most likely intended as a temporary military alliance, a strategic partnership between two sovereign equals designed to secure their state against Polish retaliation. They envisioned a relationship where the Tsar would serve as a protector, respecting their internal autonomy, their elected hetman, and their unique Cossack rights and privileges. However, for the rising power of Muscovy, which was already beginning to fashion itself into the Russian Empire, the Treaty of Pereyaslav was interpreted in a radically different light. Moscow saw it not as an alliance, but as the submission of the Little Russian people, the rightful return of a long-lost part of the ancient Kyivan Rus inheritance to the Tsar's hand. This fundamental misunderstanding would have catastrophic consequences. Hetman Ivan Mazepa, once loyal to Peter the Great, allied with Sweden in a final bid for Ukrainian independence. The defeat at Poltava in 1709 crushed this hope. Mazepa fled, his capital was destroyed, and Russia branded him a traitor, extinguishing the Hetmanate's autonomy. Under Russian rule, Ukrainians faced harsh assimilation policies like the Valuev Circular, and M's ukaz banned their language and culture. These measures aimed to erase Ukrainian identity, pushing it into the shadows for generations. World War I shattered empires, and in the chaos, Ukraine briefly declared independence in 1918. For a fleeting moment, a sovereign Ukrainian state appeared on the map, fueled by generations of longing. Stalin's forced collectivization met fierce resistance in Ukraine, which he crushed with the Holodomor, a man-made famine that killed millions. This atrocity was a brutal attempt to break Ukrainian spirit and identity. Ukraine became the epicenter of War II's devastation, suffering under Nazi occupation and Soviet occupation. Millions perished or were enslaved, as Ukraine endured unimaginable terror and loss. In 1991, after decades of struggle, Ukraine declared independence and confirmed it in a nationwide referendum. Overwhelming support across all regions made sovereignty a reality at last. Ukrainians took to the streets in 2004's Orange Revolution, peacefully overturning a rigged election and affirming their democratic will. This spirit re-emerged in the Revolution of Dignity, as citizens again demanded freedom and a European future. Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea and the war in Donbass tested Ukraine's resolve, culminating in the full-scale invasion of 2022. Ukraine's resistance became a defining struggle for sovereignty and identity. Through centuries of conquest and oppression, Ukrainians have fiercely preserved their language, culture, and drive for self-rule. This enduring spirit has carried them through devastation, always ready to seize the moment for freedom. Today's war is a battle over history itself, against the myth that Ukraine is not real. Ukrainians fight for their right to exist, to choose their future, and to remain free from imperial domination.